In 1947, the United Nations, which only had a few of the world's countries in it back then, voted to partition the country. This plan marked off 55% of Palestine for a Jewish state, but the UN never explained how it could be a Jewish state when half the people in its territory were Palestinian. To nobody's surprise, Palestinians rejected the UN's plan, but it was accepted by the Zionist movement, which had worked for decades to turn Palestine into a Jewish state. The Zionists saw an opportunity. See, Britain had been occupying Palestine for almost 30 years, but around this time they announced that they were quitting the country and going home, and the Zionists knew that would leave them with the strongest military in the region. So they instructed their forces to take more land than what the UN had given them, and to do what they needed to do to reduce the number of Palestinians living there. In the cities, bombs were set off in Palestinian neighborhoods. Villages were attacked and residents forced out. After inspecting parts of Jerusalem that had been emptied of Palestinians, Zionist leader David Ben-Gurion said, "In many Arab neighborhoods in the West, you do not even see one Arab. If we persist, it's quite possible that in the next 6 or 8 months, there will be considerable changes in the country and to our advantage."
One of the events that helped speed up these changes took place on April 9, 1948, when the Palestinian village of Deir Yassin was attacked. A British government report to the United Nations described the scene.
250 people were killed in circumstances of great savagery. Women and children were stripped, lined up, photographed, and then slaughtered by automatic firing.
What happened at Deir Yassin set off panic all over the country. As news spread, people fled, fearing they would be next. There were dozens of similar massacres during this time, resulting in entire Palestinian communities fleeing.
By the time the last British soldier left on May 15, 1948, 250,000 Palestinians, a quarter of their population, had already fled their homes. The night before, Ben-Gurion announced the founding of the State of Israel, with himself as its first prime minister. But the fighting wasn't over. Several Arab countries sent soldiers to try to defend the Palestinians, but the Israeli army was better equipped, better organized, and unlike the Arab armies, it had a unified command and support from some European countries. Israeli forces kept pushing into the territory assigned by the UN to a Palestinian state, and in towns like Lidda and Ramla, 50,000 people were forced to flee in what became known as the Lidda Death March. After being emptied, the towns were given Hebrew names, Lod and Ramla. The buildings and homes were taken over by the new Israeli state and handed to Jewish immigrants, and this happened all over the country. Israeli forces even pushed into areas like West Jerusalem, which the UN plan said should have been an international zone. By the time the UN secured an armistice, 3/4 of the Palestinian people had become refugees. In Arabic, they call this the Nakba, literally the catastrophe. The new state of Israel now stood on 78% of what had been Palestine. The remaining parts were annexed by Jordan or taken over by Egypt. A year later, the UN passed a resolution calling for all Palestinian refugees to be allowed to return home. But Israel has always refused to comply. Palestine had been erased.